So we did this exercise where like we both separately wrote down on a piece of paper, what do you want life to be like 5 years from now?
Mm.
Yeah.
And like we didn't look at each other's answers. And we did this probably a year into.
That was before we went to Bali.
Before we went
That's
to
what
Bali.
I was talking about.
Yeah. And so we were at this cafe and we were having coffee. I was like, I got a great idea. Let's write down what we want in the next 5 years and let's just compare notes. And we were lucky in the sense that it was all, well, no, I don't think lucky, because I think that's a consequence of the first step. So like if you're clear about what you want, then you're naturally going to find someone who's a values match, because you've already decided in advance, this is what I want and I'm not going to tolerate any less and I'm going to be that person. And it's kind of like the holy trinity. And we were sitting in this cafe and we both wrote down this whole thing of what we wanted life to be like 5 years from now. And then we shared, and it was exactly the same. Like, Donna wanted travel, children, like all of the milestones were the same. And one of the things that we see all the time is like people just don't talk about those things. Like, you know, is marriage on your cards and on the cards in the next 3 years? And most people are scared of that conversation. Like, just because you talk about it doesn't mean you have to do it. Like, it's just you have to get an idea of where you're going. Otherwise, that time's going to pass. And if it hasn't gone the direction that you want, you'll have resentment. And we end up talking to couples that are on the, you know, the precipice of like, you know, fuck you, all this stuff. And it's like 20 years of resentment that's so hard to let go of. And, you know, it's so much harder if you don't say anything for such a long period of time. You just sow these seeds, this garden of resentment in your stomach. And then all of a sudden it just comes out, you know, and this is probably the root cause of infidelity and massive fights and divorce and all that stuff, is because people just aren't fucking talking to each other.
Yeah, I think that like one of the big lessons that I guess I learned in the last couple of years was like, what is resentment? And it kind of comes from that space when an expectation hasn't been met. If an expectation hasn't been met, it creates resentment. But if you've never communicated that expectation in the first place, you've set yourself and your partner up for failure, because they can't possibly meet an expectation that hasn't been communicated. So I think it's really awesome that you've both been able to, you know, really clearly articulate your expectations for, I guess, both your relationship and your life.